The Protestant writer A.W. Tozer once said, "In every Christian's heart there's a cross and a throne, and the Christian sits on the throne till he puts himself on the cross, and if he refuses the cross, then he remains on the throne." Venerable Fulton Sheen once said, "If you do not worship God, you do worship something, and 9 times out of 10, it will be yourself." Father Mike Schmitz once said that we are idol-making machines. We are hardwired to worship. It's just written into the very fabric of our being. And so if we are not worshiping God, then we are worshiping something. I know for me, when I was growing up, baseball was definitely an idol. While I wasn't necessarily consciously worshiping baseball, my life did structure around baseball. It dictated my schedule. It dictated the types of friends that I hung out with, the type of artwork that I put up in my room, what I watched, what I read about, my visions for life. Everything was oriented around baseball. And then as I grew up and my aspirations to become a Major League Baseball player didn't pan out, I made an idol out of acting. Same thing. Everything revolved around acting. The types of friends that I chose to spend my time with, what I read, what I dreamed about, my vision for life, all my hard work day in and day out, everything oriented around acting. And so again, while I wasn't necessarily consciously worshiping acting, in the depths of my heart, I really was. And another word for these types of things that maybe take over the thrones of our heart, these idols, these things we worship, is attachments. An attachment is something that you postpone your joy for. When it came to baseball, I was like, oh man, once I become a Major League Baseball player, then I'll feel set. I'll finally feel comfortable in my own skin. And when it came to acting, I thought, oh man, if I could just get to this level in acting, then I'll finally feel free. I'll finally feel like I made it, like I'm someone, like I'm who I'm supposed to be. And there comes a point in every Christian's life where we have to take a step back and examine all these different desires and loves in our heart and make a firm decision to make God and God alone sit on the throne of our heart. St. Augustine once said, "You have made us for yourself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in you." St. Augustine didn't say, "You have made us for that perfect relationship or that ideal career, O Lord, and our heart is restless until we receive it." No, you've made us for yourself, O Lord. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today as we finally wrap up chapter 2 in Venerable Fulton Sheen's Life of Christ. Today we're going to be talking about the early life of Christ. And so in all of the Gospels, we have one story from Jesus' boyhood. And it's when Jesus was 12 years old during the feast of the Passover, when Mother Mary and St. Joseph are making the journey home from Jerusalem. They make it one day's journey in the caravan before noticing that the boy Jesus wasn't with them. And so they search for him, and after 3 days, they find him in the temple. Mother Mary would later suffer another 3-day loss of Jesus from Good Friday to Easter Sunday, and she would again find Jesus in the temple on Easter Sunday, but in the temple of his resurrected body. But this initial loss of the boy Jesus and finding him in the temple is a preparation for that loss of Jesus on Good Friday. Luke notes that Jesus was 12 years old when this event happened. 12 years old. 12 years old was the legal age to participate in the temple ceremonies. So Jesus would have seen St. Joseph slaughter the Passover lamb. And back then, how they prepared the Passover lamb for supper was they stuck 2 skewers of wood through it, one through the breast and one through the forelegs. So the lambs literally looked like they were crucified. The one who would later become the Paschal lamb for the world saw all these Paschal lambs seemingly crucified. As Sheen has been driving home so far in this series, the cross was already before Jesus. And when Mother Mary and St. Joseph lost Jesus and finally found him 3 days later in the temple, Mother Mary was like, "What did you do, Jesus? You cause us so much anxiety." And Jesus responds with his first words in all the gospel in Luke 2:49 when he says, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" With this answer, Jesus is giving a clear parting of ways. He's decisively putting Mother Mary and St. Joseph in second place and God in first place. Now, when some Christians hear this story, they're like, see, Jesus only thought of Mother Mary as another woman. See, she's not that special. And 1, that's just silly. 2, that's not true. And 3, in no way does this diminish Jesus' love and filial responsibility towards Mother Mary and St. Joseph. Just like putting God first and foremost in my life doesn't diminish my love and my responsibility towards my spouse. In fact, it only makes my love and my responsibility towards my wife even greater. Now, God was always first and foremost in Jesus' life, but the boy Jesus gives a very clear example of how we need to come to that moment in our life of putting God first and foremost. So my brother, my sister, I invite you to examine your heart and see if there's anything or anyone in your life that you're postponing your joy for. Sometimes it can be a spouse, sometimes it can be a child, and we're afraid of putting God first and foremost because we're afraid of loving that person less. And the problem when we have someone in the center of our heart who is not God, the problem isn't that we love that person too much. In fact, it's that we love them too little. Because when we love God first and foremost, our capacity to love others increases exponentially. A proper ordering of our heart with God there at the top first and foremost allows us to love others properly and fully. And so this is the only incident of boyhood in Jesus' life. For the next 18 years, Jesus would work humbly and patiently in Nazareth. To make up for the disobedience of men, he would remain under a humble roof and remain obedient to Mother Mary and Saint Joseph. A lot of the comparisons he would make later on in his parables came from this time in his life. As St. Justin Martyr notes, Jesus made plows and yokes, these products of his peaceful toil he would later use to teach men about righteousness. And the products of his toil that he was most familiar with, nails and crossbeams, would later resurface as the instruments of his torture. And so why this long wait? Why this long gap in the Gospels? Why do we get this story of Jesus as a 12-year-old and then we get 18 years of radio silence until Jesus launches his public ministry? As Sheen notes here in Life of Christ, the farmer waits until the wheat is ripe before cutting it and subjecting it to the mill. Jesus was waiting patiently and humbly for his human nature to reach its peak loveliness, its perfect proportions. And so as Sheen eloquently notes, thus the choicest wheat and the reddest wine became the worthiest elements of sacrifice. God has a plan for your life. God knows the desires of your heart, and God cares about the desires of your heart. St. Augustine also once said, to fall in love with God is the greatest romance, to seek him the greatest adventure, and to find him the greatest human achievement. And so while that great adventure is unfolding, our job is to do what the boy Jesus did and make God number one in our life. And so if you want to make God number one in your life, the first step to that is to recognize that God's love is already pressing upon you. Before we ever take a step towards God, he has already made the move towards us. And then our job from there is to surrender to that love and to trust it. Just as Jesus exemplified in the early part of his life, we need to remain obedient to God and trust that in remaining obedient to God, our Lord is unfolding the greatest romance and the greatest adventure. Whew, that was chapter 2 in Venerable Fulton Sheen's Life of Christ, the early life of Christ. Next week, I promise we'll be diving into chapter 3, Baptism of Christ. And also, if you haven't gotten a copy of one of these yet, I have a link in my bio. Get your hands on one of these to follow along. And if you found anything fruitful in our conversation today, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, my friends, make God number one. Don't postpone your joy for anything. Your joy is there for the taking. Your joy is in the Lord. Stay obedient to that and stay trusting in that.